Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Today we are continuing, of course, our study for Surah al-Baqarah on now verse 1, actually now starting with verse 97. I guess I put the wrong verse in the title, but 97 is where we're starting. Streamer link is in the chat for whoever wants to join the stage. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge in God from the outcast devil. Salam, peace, Brother Mahdi. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قل من كان عدوا لجبريل فإنه نزل على قلبك بإذن الله مصدقا لما بين يديه وهدى وبشرى للمؤمنين من كان عدوا لله وملائكته ورسله وجبريل وميكال فإن الله عد للكافرين. I guess I'll also include 99 and 100. ولقد أنزلنا إليك آيات بينات وما يكفر بها إلا الفاسقون وكلما عاهدوا عهدا نبذ فريق منهم وأكثرهم لا يؤمنون. Say, whoever was an enemy to Jibreel, then indeed he brought it down upon your heart with the permission of God, confirming what is... Wait a second, did we discuss these verses last time? I think we did. Yeah, we just touched upon them, but I think it's worth revisiting at least so we can touch on it again. Man kana adwan lillahi, sorry, whoever was an enemy to Jibreel, then indeed he brought it down upon your heart with the permission of God, verifying what is between his hands and guidance and tiding for the faithful. Whoever was an enemy to God and his angels and his envoys, and Jibreel and Mikal, then indeed God is an enemy to the believer, to the deniers, astaghfirullah. So, yeah, 101 we stopped. I think that's correct. So here, to summarize probably the points that we said, plus maybe add some new points. Apparently, when I looked into it more yesterday, the common explanation is very shocking to me. Like they say that, like the people are being adversarial to Jibreel knowingly, because they view that Michael is their angel and Gabriel is not. Thus they're rejecting the message because it's being attributed to Gabriel. But I find that very outlandish and completely unsubstantiated by the verse. Rather, the verse to me is clearly saying, like, whoever God is explaining that if you're adversarial to the message, you're adversarial also to the one who sent it, which is Gabriel. And also, So you're adversarial to Gabriel, who sent it. Now, Gabriel, in their tradition, is well associated with revelation, because in the book of Daniel, he is the one who reveals to Daniel, or whatever the case, and gives the interpretation of his visions and such. So they were aware that his function is to reveal. So as far as like hearing revelation from Gabriel, that would be 100% normal. Secondly, the other association for Gabriel was with destruction, which kind of relates to his name, root of his name, which is same root as Jabar, to compel, like force, basically, emphasizing force. So he's associated with having destroyed Sodom, the people of Lut, in their tradition. He's associated with like fire and wrath and such. It brings the wrath of God, so to speak. So these two functions in Jewish thought, revelation and bringing wrath. Whereas Michael, the other sort of archangel, associated with protection of Israel and such, most heavily. So here the point, I believe, is that God is saying that if you're an enemy to, if you oppose the revelation, you also oppose the one who brought it. So you're opposing Jibreel, which is scary for multiple reasons. Number one, you're opposing the angel that brings wrath and destruction in your own view. Secondly, verse 98 has some extreme power to it, because it says, it singles out, it says, whoever is an enemy to God and his angels and his envoys, and Jibreel and Mikael, specifically singling those two out, then indeed God is an enemy to the deniers. Meaning, if you're an enemy to one, you're an enemy to all, sort of thing. God's forces are not divided. So if you oppose Jibreel by means of opposing the message that he brought, then Mikael also will be your enemy, which is a stunning reversal, because to the children of Israel, they would view Mikael as their protector, who always is protecting Israel. But God is saying here that he has basically no nationalistic loyalty. He will be on the side of God against you. And usually Mikael like defeats the enemies of Israel, so to speak, but in this case, they will be the enemy. So any other thoughts to add meanwhile up to verse 99?
Yeah, perhaps. Can you hear me well? Okay. So here, and there are also other verses where um, God and his angels, messengers, even believers are portrayed as a unified force, uh, like cursed upon everyone, angels and believers included, or um, glorification by angels and believers, and so on. So that is also one of the examples how God, and for instance, like obey God and his messenger also is somewhat of a unified force.
Sorry, sister. I don't know if there's anything you can do about it, but it's kind of hard to make you out. Like it's coming a bit muffled.
No, no, I'm in the middle of that, unfortunately.
It's also, there's an undertext of ethnic pride and ethnic loyalty sort of thing, because one of the primary bases of rejecting the message in terms of the Quran would be that it's coming from a non-Jew, or it's coming to a non-Jew. So to reject it on an ethnic basis is like an ethnic sort of loyalty, basically. But God is making the point that Mikad has no ethnic loyalty. He will not be loyal to Israel if they oppose God, even though traditionally he is like thought of as protecting Israel. And then there's also the fact that, for instance, Second Temple Jewish literature, especially with the Enoch, like Enoch 1 Enoch places these two angels specifically as the highest angels. Oh, so Sister Meow says, there are many verses about God and messengers and angels as believers as a unified force, blessing by all of them and likewise cursed by all of them. Yes, and later in this surah specifically, I think you're referencing that verse where it says, those who denied and died while they're deniers, upon them is the curse of God and the angels and the people altogether. It's quite striking because you basically have, of course, there's no division on God's side, so to speak. The angels will not be against one another. They'll not be loyal to you if you reject one of them. If you reject one of them, you reject all of them, just like if you reject one messenger, you reject all of them, or if you reject one revelation, you reject all of them, and all of it is a rejection of God. So there's just one more point, kind of like, so they see, like I said, Jibreel is somewhat seen as the destroying angel, so to speak. Mikael is seen as their protecting angel. So God is both making them aware that they're opposing Jibreel, who has the power to destroy and is sent to destroy, such as destroy the people of Sodom, and Mikal, the protector, so like destroyer and protector, their protector will not protect them, and that they're opposing the destroyer, so to speak. So, continuing a bit. أَوَكُلَّمَا عَاهَدتُّ عَهْدًا نَبَذَهُ فَرِيقٌ مِّنْهُمْ بَلْ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ وَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ عِندِ اللَّهِ مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَّا مَعَهُمْ نبذ فريق من الذين أوتوا الكتاب كتاب الله وراء ظهورهم كأنهم لا يعلمون واتبع ما تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان وما كفر سليمان ولكن الشياطين كفروا يعلمون الناس السحر وما أنزل على الملكين ببابل هاروت وماروت وما يعلمان من أحد حتى يقولا إنما نحن فتنة فلا تكفر فيتعلمون منهما ما يفرقون بين المرء وزوجه وما هم بضارين به من أحد إلا بإذن الله ويتعلمون ما يضرهم ولا ينفعهم ولقد علموا لمن اشتراهم ما له في الآخرة من خلاق ولبئس ما شروا به أنفسهم لو كانوا يعلمون. Or is it, this one connects a bit also to the previous section, but or is it that every time they pledged a pledge, tossed it a party of them, rather most of them do not believe. And then it goes on to say, and when came to them an envoy from God, verifying what is with them, a party of those who were given the book tossed the book of God behind their backs as if they did not know. So maybe we'll start there before the next one because it's a bit of a transition. Because the immediate context had been, going back even to 91. And when upon it is said to them, believe in what God has sent down, they said, we believed in what was brought down upon us. And they deny what is after it, while it is the truth, verifying what is with them. So why were you killing the prophets of God before if you were believers? And also, when there came to them a book from God verifying what is with them, they denied it, so the curse of God is upon the deniers. So very much the context was on the revelation of the Qur'an, the book coming to them from God, and them denying it, and God referencing how it's consistent with their past denial even of their own prophets. It's not coming from faith, even though they claim like justification to deny it. Then God further says basically their denial of the Quran is opposition to Gabriel and to God, basically. Whoever is an enemy to God. What? Yeah, whoever is an enemy to God. And then explicitly links their denial of the book to the defiance of God, and then transitions to the terminology of their covenant or pledge. So every time they took a pledge, a party of them tossed it. And it's a kind of phrased as a question. Is it that every time they took a pledge, a party of them tossed it, or rather most of them do not believe? They have several pledges that you could reference here. I mean, God said that whenever a messenger comes confirming what is with them, they shall believe in him and support him, and they accepted that. Just the general pledge to worship God alone, to establish the prayer, give the purification, etc. And of course, calling back, O children of Israel, remember my delight which I delight upon you, and fulfill my pledge. I will fulfill your pledge, and be afraid of me alone. In terms of the pattern of tossing their pledge, primarily you could reference their worshipping of the calf, their refusal to enter the Holy Land, the breaking of the Sabbath. All of these were already mentioned. Bax is missing from the translation. In verse 101, it's here. So we'd already remarked like how many times sort of they turned away from God, and how many times God showed mercy upon them, forgave them after worshiping the calf, or pardoned them for worshiping the calf. They had asked to see God. God struck them down and brought them back to life. They had refused to enter the Holy Land. God still pardoned them, even though they had to wander for 40 years. And then continuously they turned away from God, worshipping other than Him, and had to be sent prophet after prophet. So they do appear to have an incredible tendency to break their covenant and break their pledge. So much so that God asks, is it every time that they took a pledge, a party of them broke it? or tossed it. So it's like for them, it's more so the norm to break the pledge rather than to be loyal. But they do tend to paint themselves as loyal, consistent servants of God. But the evidence tends to show otherwise, especially, for instance, in this context, the response to revelation and to the message. And then I feel that God gives a sort of diagnosis, rather most of them do not believe, meaning this sort of overrides the pledge. If you make a pledge with God, of what good is that pledge if you don't believe in God? It's a pledge between you and an entity you don't believe in. So that's an easy pledge to break. Yeah, for being tossed in the fire, usually you references with the word like trying to think of an example. وَإِذَا أَلْقُوا مِنْهَا مَكَانًا ضَيِّقًا. This word, to be cast, throw down. Same word as Musa casting down his staff, for example. I think there's a verse from Surah 8 where it says, إِنَّ شَرَ الدَّوَابِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ عَاهَدتَ مِنْهُمْ ثُمَّ يَنْقُضُونَ عَهْدَهُمْ فِي كُلِّ مَرَّةٍ وَهُمْ لَا يَتَّقُونَ. It's strikingly similar, even though completely different context. Because notice here, it used specifically the word they do not believe, لا يؤمنون. It didn't say يكفرون. It didn't say they deny, which is the usual way to indicate disbelief, so to speak. But it literally said they do not believe, لا يؤمنون, which is rare in the Quran, but does occur. It's also occurred before in the surah. In verse 6, indeed those who denied, it is the same upon them if you warn them or you did not warn them, they do not believe. So the particular usage of they do not believe here, rather than they deny, is significant. I'm referencing this case from Surah 8 where God says, indeed, the worst of creatures with God are those who denied, so they will not believe, so they do not believe. Those who you take a pledge from, then they break their pledge every time while they are not wary. It has both the elements of not belief and the pledge linked tightly in both verses. No worries, Sister Meow. So both the elements of taking a pledge and not believing, disbelief literally. And in that surah, God says the worst creature is the one who does not believe, who takes a pledge and breaks it every time. So these are tightly linked. Yeah, they're not believing. I think that's fair phrasing. So basically, it sets up, I would say, the breaking of a pledge as a natural consequence of not believing in both verses, because it says those who, the worst of creatures with God are those who deny. So they do not believe. Those who, when you take a pledge from them, they break their pledge every time. Also, the every time is almost shared between these two references. So I think maybe two connections. One, that those who in general break their pledge do so due to lack of faith, lack of belief, so to speak, because they do not believe that they're accountable. So they can be opportunistic in how they uphold or don't uphold their words. And whenever it's convenient to not uphold their word, they will simply do it, uphold their pledge. But secondly, also in terms of a pledge with God, of what consequences a pledge with God if you don't believe in God. So it's easy to break for someone who does not believe. Yeah, the word tossing is interesting, and it's shared in the next verse as well, 101, with tossing the book. So it seems to indicate, in context, having something, but then when it becomes inconvenient, so to uphold your pledge, just toss it. Or similarly, hold on to the book, but as soon as something comes that you don't like, toss the whole book. It has a strong connection to hypocrisy, therefore, because it's opportunistic obedience, only when it seems convenient. So it's obviously referencing, similar to before, that the book came to them what they recognized and they denied therein. They have a recognition of the book that is being revealed to them on the basis of its contents and its overall message. The story of Musa in its various facets, other stories, like the whole narrative overall, is pretty much shared. Secondly, the overall message is clearly potent monotheistic message of the highest potency. So they, on both bases of judgment of the overall content and the underlying message, there would be an extreme recognition to anyone who's familiar with the book. Yeah, but they effectively have to close their eyes to this recognition, as it says, throw the book behind their backs. And God says they threw the book of God behind their backs as if they did not know. So they effectively have to play stupid with the book of God in order to deny it. Which is kind of how they do it. They come up with a bunch of excuses as to why they're not supposed to follow this. And then, if no other points, we can continue. I think 102 and 103. I read 103, 102 in Arabic. I'll also add 103. وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَمَا ثُبَّتْ مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ خَيْرًا لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. And in English, and they followed what recited the devils upon the rule of Sulaiman. And not did Sulaiman deny, however the devils denied, teaching the people enchantment and what was brought down upon the two angels in Babylon, Harut and Marut. And not do they teach anyone until they say only we are a trial, so do not deny. So they learn from them what separates between a man and his spouse, and not are they to harm with it anyone except by the permission of God. And they learn what harms them and does not benefit them. And surely already they knew whoever bought it, not is there for him in hereafter of any share or creation, khalaq. And surely wretched is what they sold themselves with it if they knew. And if they had believed and been wary, surely the vestment from God would have been better if they knew. Yeah, for sihr, enchantment, usually, because it can also be turned into a verb. It's also a very good translation, I find, but you can say, our eyes have been enchanted, etc. So first, I also have like a chat here, which I use for the history aspects to give like an overview of archaeological, scriptural connections. Because it mentions quite a few things here. Babylon, two angels, Harut, Marut, the rule of Suleiman, the devils, effectively, and the magic. So basically, Babylon is significant for a few reasons, I would say, and this is what the AI is also summarizing. Number one, it says it's a highly developed culture of incantations, exorcism, protective rituals, demonology, divination, and anti-witchcraft practice. Specialized Ashipu, usually translated exorcists, practiced recognized ritual science, and major anti-witchcraft corpora such as Maqlu preserve traditions whose roots extend into the Old Babylonian period. First millennium Mesopotamians used magical stones, incantations, and demon amulets extensively. Even demons could be manipulated against other demons. So they would seek even like protection of demons against other demons and such, being the point. And in Jewish scripture itself, already Babylon is associated specifically with sorcery. Isaiah 47 addresses daughter Babylon and mocks it, her many sorceries, her many enchantments, astrologers, stargazers, and monthly prognosticators, telling Babylon to continue the spells it practiced from youth and see if they could save it. Secondly, it says the Torah itself treats sorcery as covenantally forbidden, which could reference to the part where it says they certainly knew that whoever bought it, there's no share for him in the hereafter. Deuteronomy 18 prohibits a whole catalog, including divination, augury, sorcery, spellbinding, consultation of spirits, and necromancy. Now, in Second Temple Judaism, there exists the concept of angels teaching humans forbidden knowledge. It says specifically in the Book of Watchers, the oldest section of 1 Enoch, probably from the late 2nd century BC, tells how heavenly watchers descended and teach humanity forbidden arts. In verses 7 through 8, it says they taught charms, enchantments, cutting of roots, knowledge of plants, along with other dangerous sciences. In Enoch, though, the angels themselves rebel and teach in transgression. However, in the Quran, they are still obedient, saying, "We're only a test, so do not disbelieve." And it says also the Quranic formulation actually solves the theological problem generated by the Enochic version, which is that why would God's angels corrupt mankind by teaching evil? Rather, they warn mankind not to misuse what is being shown. Yeah, and Of course, Suleiman has a heavy association with demons already, also in the Quran and Second Temple Judaism. The canonical Bible does not describe Suleiman as a magician controlling demons, but this existed outside of the canon per se, heavily. Josephus even says God gave Solomon knowledge for expelling demons, and that these techniques were still practiced in Josephus' own time. Josephus claims personally to have witnessed a Jewish exorcist using Solomon's name and incantations to expel a demon. Now later though, between roughly the 1st and 4th century CE, the Testament of Solomon develops an enormous demonological system in which Solomon uses a special ring or seal to bind and question demons and compel them to labor. Its precise composition history is debated, but clearly belongs to late antique development of the Solomon as demon master tradition, it says. Yeah, I never liked the movie either. Oh, I'm not sharing, I guess. Thought it was sharing. Okay. It says by the 7th century, which is the time of the revelation of the Quran, Jewish Babylonia was saturated with practical magic. It says the largest surviving corpus of Hebrew and Aramaic texts physically written by Jews between roughly the 3rd and 9th centuries CE is not rabbinic manuscripts, it's magical material, especially amulets and Aramaic incantation bowls. So there's an extreme saturation of magic, more so than rabbinic material in the period of around when the Quran was revealed in Jewish circles. These bowls flourished particularly in Sasanian Babylonia, which is the world in which the Babylonian Talmud developed. Modern research shows that rabbis were not simply isolated from magical environment. Rabbinic texts themselves participate in discussions over which apotropaic and supernatural practices were legitimate. So basically, the Jewish communities in Babylonia were still alive and well and practicing active magical demonological culture at precisely the moment of the Quran's revelation. Also, it makes connections to the separating a man from his wife, love magic, erotic coercion, hatred magic, and spells designed to separate couples are well documented throughout Greco-Roman and late antique magical culture. Even strikingly, an Aramaic incantation bowl from Iraq has been identified as a separation spell specifically designed to sow discord between a man and woman. It also says the names for Harut and Marut, somewhat obscure, but having some connection perhaps to an Iranian pairing, Haruvatat and Ammaratat. Later Middle Persian Hordad and Mordad. So these are basically, I guess, a group of holy entities in Zoroastrian religion, or two holy entities, somewhat cognate angels, basically, created by their conception of God. Right. So just looking at the evidence, it kind of follows the progression. Number one, ancient Mesopotamia heavily developed magical culture, exorcism, incantation, demonology, etc. The Israelite scripture severely prohibits sorcery. Second Temple Judaism in the Enochic text records heavenly beings teaching occult arts. In the earlier to late Roman period, Solomon becomes described in this way as a magician, basically, in the text. And by the time of the revelation of the Quran, these practices are heavily spread through the Jewish community, more so than even the rabbinic texts, as we saw. Oh, again, I wasn't sure. So now return to the verse. My general impression is basically that they disregarded the book of God in favor of magic. Basically, they find magic more compelling, which is like perfectly supported by the fact that magic is more commonly reported than even rabbinic texts at this period in Jewish and Aramaic circles. Thus, they find it easy to disregard the book of God. They're most interested in magic and spells and such, even at the present moment of the Qur'an's revelation. Oh, still not sure. I don't learn, I guess. Or maybe it's quitting on me. I don't know what's going on. But now you can see it, I think. Okay. So a few points. Number one, God makes basically the point that the magic does them no good. It's very attractive and blah blah blah, but it does no good, like if analyzed objectively. It's causing separation between a man and his wife. It's causing corruption, afflictions, requires exorcism, requires protection, amulets, all sorts of nonsense when you're in this world just to protect yourself. And it can bring nothing good. Even the alleged good it brings is in fact corruption. So they learned what harms them and what does not benefit them. And they also knew whoever bought it shall not have in the hereafter any share. Especially referencing, for instance, back how it was strictly forbidden for them to participate in magic in Deuteronomy. So I think God overall microscopically cites their heavy engagement, and notice how long the verse is. I think that's also significant, almost to emphasize their heavy engagement perhaps with magic. And their engagement with magic is already evidence that they've disregarded God's revelation, which prohibits it. So now them tossing a new book from God behind their backs is no surprise, as even currently they're more invested in magic than the book of God at the time of the Qur'an's revelation. It's another case of selling oneself. We had this actually at least, I think, 2, 3 times so far in the surah. There is the ones who sold guidance for astrayness, the ones who sold the hereafter for the closer life. In this case, they sold themselves for something wretched, whereas the reward of God would have been better. Well, in the phrasing, it's like later they attribute Sulaiman himself as a magician, but I feel like the Quran is correcting that misconception as an aside in this verse, where it says, Sulaiman did not deny, but the devils denied, teaching people enchantment. So the source of teaching the people enchantment was the devils. The devils were under Sulaiman's rule, but Sulaiman was not the source of this information. So I think the Quran is subtly refuting that Sulaiman was involved in any sorcery. Furthermore, the source of who taught the people is the devils who were present in Sulaiman's reign. And they taught this Babylonian sort of magic that's derived originally from these two angels. So there's a progression. First, these two angels teach Babylon, effectively, and then this stuff reaches the Israelites through Sulaiman's reign, through the devils teaching the people. But Sulaiman was not involved. That's the overall picture I get. And notice, I mean, there's a bit of significance to also the use of the phrase, if only they had believed and been wary, the reward with God would have been better. So it's clear that the participation in the magic itself is an act of disbelief, because it also says, we're only a trial, so do not deny. So they're warned explicitly that this constitutes denial, to participate in the magic. And God says, if they believed instead, it would have been better. So any other thoughts up to verse 102 or 3? So if not, I think this is a good place to stop. Inshallah, next time we'll continue. It'll be after tomorrow, God willing. And I'm not sure, maybe we'll continue with the verses or we'll do like a analysis section for the previous section. But either way, after tomorrow, God willing. So thank you guys for joining. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.